company for a very long time. Prior to that, I used to work for a company called Northrop Grumman, and we ran fairly large projects over multiple continents. I have a MS in finance. I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, and I have also another bachelor's degree in management and computer science. It was cybernetics in my day. So I've coached, gosh, probably 27 teams in various sports, from basketball to baseball to football to soccer. And I'm looking forward to serving the city and helping where I can.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Pledge. Okay, shall we do the pledge?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for
Which is
And stands
one
nation,
nation under God,
indivisible.
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Beautiful. Thank you. I don't see anybody. Oh, Roberta is here as a public speaker. Hello, Roberta. This is the time for you to speak in the meeting. Hi, Roberta. This is the time in our agenda for if you have a comment.
It's on mute.
See, I'm not the only one.
I should be unmuted. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, hi, guys. So happy you're doing this. You know, these are really important topics, and I do follow the city finances. I'm really happy that you're looking at the donation policy. Really happy that you're, looking at the city finances very closely, because I know that, we had a second round of COVID, and, I'll just save my comments for once you get into the discussion items, but I appreciate you doing this work. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Jonathan, you're also on. Are you here as you're not a liaison, so do you want to say something now, or you just want to listen?
No, thank you, Chair. I'm just here to listen.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Helen, do you want to put up the agenda for everybody, please? So. I just wanted to just ask the rest of you if this is the right order. Are you guys happy with doing it in this order? I think we might go a little longer than normal. Try to, we try to finish it in an hour and a half, but the first one is a little bit meaty. It's okay, this right order?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you've got Kulji, you got the budget second, right after minutes. Yeah, I think that's the right order.
Okay. All right.
From my perspective.
Okay, super. Let's approve the minutes, please, or if you can put them up. If you haven't read them, this is take a few minutes to read, and then if I can have a motion.
I've read them. Move approval. Gary?
Second. Yeah, Tony seconds. I've read them. They look fine.
Okay, upon a motion by Commissioner Callback, second by Commissioner Richmond, the minutes for January 19, 2021. Oh, sorry.
February 16th.
February 16th.
February 16th 2021 is approved. Now I'm going to call the roll. So Chair Colcack,
Yes.
Vice Chair McClatchy,
Here.
Commissioner Frey,
Yes.
Commissioner Colares,
Claris.
Claris, Commissioner Callback,
Yes.
Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Richmond.
Yes.
So all approved, except for Commissioner Martin being absent.
And actually, I have to abstain because I was not here.
Okay, sure.
I thought you were just calling a general roll.
I guess we could do it both at once, right?
It's unfortunate that Jim's not here today. There was such a positive comment by him in our notes. Yeah. Okay. All right, done. Okay, mid-year. So John, how do you want to do this?
Okay.
We just have a conversation first. You want to present the
Well, so
document?
yep. So we do have a presentation to give you really quickly. Helen, do you want to stop sharing so I can pull it
Yeah.
up? Okay. So Richard and I will be presenting, but we're happy to have this more as a conversation. So if you have questions as we go along, feel free to jump in and ask those. Let me see if I can get this to, there we go. So of course we're here to do the fiscal year 2020-21 mid-year budget review. Now normally this would be done in January or February. We're a little behind. We apologize for that. The mid-year will be going to the city council. Maybe to help out, if we're not talking, can we go on mute? Will help with the cross noise. Of course, normally we would like to have a little bit of time between the commission meeting and the council meeting. That's something that we're working on and will plan for in the future. But of course, we are in a little bit of a crunch here. So we'll just get right into it. There we go. So just to briefly go over what we're going to talk about today, we have some asks of the commission that we'll review, and so you can just be thinking about what it is that we're hoping to get from you tonight. We'll then, of course, go through the mid-year as of December 31st, 2020 budget actuals. And then the year-end assumptions for what we are projecting for the end of this fiscal year. We'll go through the FY 19-20 unassigned fund balances and look at allocating the unassigned fund balance. And then we'll come back to what the asks are. So at the beginning, you don't have to furiously write them down. We'll refresh your memory there at the end of the presentation. Now, before we get started, there are a few things that I hope we can all remember and sort of get our minds around as we go through the mid-year budget process. First and foremost, this mid-year is far different than any past mid-years, and hopefully far different than any future mid-years. As we all know, we're living in very unprecedented times, and I've been with Los Altos for almost 12 years now and have never seen a mid-year numbers and uncertainty as we do now. I do want to say, so the assumptions and the projections that we're going to go through tonight are only for the current fiscal year 2020-2021. We're going to be making some assumptions and some projections that will get us through to the end of June. As we move into the 2-year budget cycle in the next couple of months, we will be making different budget assumptions. Of course, we know that hopefully things are turning around COVID-wise, and we have some other aspects that will greatly impact the city's finances, both positively and probably negatively. So again, this is just for this fiscal year. If we can, narrow our lens, I think that will help us in this discussion. Now, things aren't as bad as they may sound. We're going to talk about some negatives, but I don't want us to get to think that I don't want us to think that they're too negative, because they are not actually as bad as they may sound. Of course, they are bad for this fiscal year, but as I say, the light at the end of the tunnel is starting to get a little bit closer. But even that, there's still some unknowns. And so that's why I'm hoping that we can all look at this as just for this fiscal year. And then as we start budgeting, we can start to look at, okay, what do we think the rate of recovery is going to be? Can we add in some of the revenues that we've lost, and whatnot? Now, I do want to comment on, of course, last week, President signed the COVID relief bill, which includes funds for local government agencies. We do anticipate receiving funds. Hopefully they are not an insignificant amount, but at this time we just don't know enough about it. We don't know how much, we don't know when, we don't know if there are restrictions around them, if there's anything that we can use them for or we can't use them for, etc. And so for purposes of mid-year, we're not considering those funds, but certainly as they come in or as we know more about them, we will start adding those into our budgeting and forecasting methods. Okay, with that in mind, we have 3 asks of the commission tonight. One, we're asking you to recommend approval of the general fund revenue and expenditure adjustments. Richard's going to go through those a little bit. And so we'd ask that you would recommend approval, the city council approve those. The allocation of unassigned fund balances, again, we'll go through those and get your input, feedback, and recommendation on those. And then the last is the last action that the council will take is considering an updated salary schedule. So we'll ask you to recommend approval of that. Very minor change on that one, but nonetheless, we need to do it. So with that in mind, I will turn it over to Richard, and he can go through some of the numbers.
Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well on this first Monday after the time change. I'm going to take you through the numbers portion of this report. I'm assuming everyone's pretty much read through my staff report. I'm not going to go verbatim on it. I'm going to kind of take a higher level, mostly go over the tables and such. So as you can see on the table before you, the table before you is the revenues for the year. It's actually comparing prior year revenues 1920 and year to date, and the actuals for 1920. And then showing you the approved budget for 2021, and then the year to date through 12/31 actuals. The 2021 budget column shows the detailed breakdown of the 44 million in revenues that were budgeted for the year. Those numbers were we're lowered back in June, by the way, from the original budget. So these are actually approved as of June 20th, or June 23rd, I believe, 2020. So the year-to-date totals through December 31st shows the city received roughly $15.6 million. While it's roughly 35% of the budget, it's I just want to remind you that these are receipts as of December. It's the accruals haven't taken place. These are just all the actual receipts. A large portion of property taxes and sales taxes are received in January. So if you would like, I can use property tax as an example. Although it shows roughly 8.9 through December and only 32%, if you add in January's receipts, it brings the total up to roughly 51%. And I'd also like to point out it's as of January, that's a roughly an $870,000 increase over prior year actuals. So it does, support the trend that property taxes are going to be, greater than prior years, definitely. But I think, as I highlighted in my memo or my staff report, that they might not quite hit the budgeted portion, budget amount of property tax. I can't say for why there was a little aggressive on the property tax. All I can tell you is that's what they are, and this is where they're projecting to come in. So on the positive note that they are going to be greater than prior years. So that is a good sign. Sales tax is another one of those receipts thing, where if I added January's receipts, you're looking at 53% of budget for sales tax. So that's 6 months worth. So a good sign there is that sales tax will probably most likely exceed the budgeted amount by a portion, a small amount.
Hey, Richard.
Yes.
Sorry, just to be clear, I just wanted to be so that it's easier for us to follow. The last column, FY 19-20 budget to actual percentage, you're saying that you are projecting now that up to June 30th of this year, our total property tax is going to be 101% of what we had budgeted, right?
No, that column's a little.
So what is
actually,
that column?
That column is comparing 1920's budget to actual. So in other words, it's comparing the second column where it says year-to-date actual FY 19-20 and comparing the first column of 19-20 budget. So it's comparing those two, the first two columns, and giving you a 100.
Okay, that's why I was a little confused, because in our town the property taxes do go up even in the most dismal years,
right?
As a percentage, but the question always is, do they go up 3% or 9%?
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're saying that's just a comparison of column 3 from the left and column 5 from the left. Is that right?
Well, actually, it's the approved budget 19-20, and then year-to-date actual fiscal year.
Right. Yeah,
that's what that 101.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then So I was confused that I thought you're thinking our property tax only went up 1%, which I found. Possible.
Right. I think in my staff report it mentions that assessed values did go up like almost 7%.
Right. Yeah.
So you're probably looking at a 7% increase overall.
Yes, in fact, that's why the surprise for this mid-year is that I think we thought that property tax was a big swing factor in our revenue, that actually the property prices kept going up through COVID. So we thought, in fact, I was guessing that we would not be in a lot of trouble. So, but it seems like we still can be short. So.
Yeah. The trouble is, as I'm going to point out a little bit later, is the TOT.
Yeah,
that's the biggest one.
I'll mute myself. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So sales tax, as I mentioned, if you added in the January receipts, you're looking at, roughly for 53% of the budget. So sales tax is looking like it's coming on point. Now the TOT one, definitely that one is going to be the hardest hit, of about 1.3 from the current budget. It was lowered back in June, 60% at the time of the original budget. So, I mean, it's going to come in even, like I said, even lower than what we have there, roughly, about $1.3 million. And and that estimate again is kind of based on where we stand right now. This is where the current level of revenues that are coming in is as there's still a lot of restrictions that are going on, obviously, that happened in the last few months. So there's a possibility that it could be not that bad, because as things open up, it's definitely going to affect your TOT revenue. So this is a worst case, I kind of think, as a scenario. Say restrictions aren't lifted and we're still continuing on the same pace. This is where I'm kind of estimating that we'd be about $1.3 million short. So like John said, there's a bright side. We're kind of being conservative with our estimate, but there is a bright side that it could be better. The next one, kind of going down, kind of just touching on the large revenue sources, the large budgeted revenue sources. The other ones are kind of trending online, roughly where we expect. A lot of them are the business license will, large majority of it comes in January, February. That's when everybody's renewing their business license. So we'll keep close tabs on that one. But I think when we hit the next, by the end of March, we should be seeing roughly, I would think 80–90% of those revenues when they come in. But we'll keep a close eye on those. Document transfer tax is going pretty well. That's hard to estimate. I mean, it is well above budget right now, but those are basically transfers of property, selling properties, and I think it also includes non-secured items, non-secured property. So going down, recreation fees, by a long shot, from a percentage standpoint, recreation fees got hit the hardest. We're looking at maybe 6% in total that we would collect a budget. That's 21,000 is the year to date as of December, and it didn't look like there's nothing coming in, obviously, due to the shutdown. Again, that could change, but this is just our best estimate at this time. Community development is going well. Lots of construction going on, lots of fees and plan check revenues and things are coming in. So those look like they will come in a little over budget. Franchise fees, although they're really low at December, again, that's receipts. A large portion of those come in the later months of the year.
Richard, could I ask a question?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
You kind of skipped over interest income, and I realized that I don't understand why there was 1.7 million in 19 and 20, and then it drops back down to 381. Yeah. What's that about? I don't.
The 1920 1.7 million is a big aberration, I guess you could call it. And you have to consider that's as of June 30th, 2020. Okay, so consider that all the market downturn and the market, the interest rate changes that went on from March of 20 to June of 20. They went down to the
correct. Yeah, at the end of 19, they dropped
interest rate.
The Fed cut interest rates substantially.
Mm-hmm. So what happens there is from when you're holding your investments, there's a accounting standards board or accounting pronouncement, sorry, government accounting pronouncement that says as of your year end, you have to you have to take the market value of
Mark
what
to
those
market.
invest, right? So considering the city was holding some investments that, you know, their market value was really, really high, you know,
Mhm.
because they didn't, you're holding the investment that has a good rate of return. So the market value of that is substantially, is higher than your cost. You have to recognize that on June 30th. So considering you had your market value was really sky high, they had to recognize that interest revenue at that point in time.
So it wasn't actual interest revenue, it's more of a capital gain
Right.
as it goes to market?
Yes, yes. You could look at it that way. Yeah.
I mean, we had a bunch of money that we used up, so we had it sitting in our bank for a while.
Mhm.
But I am a little bit confused, but they would never spike that much, and the capital gains would only come if we realized some capital gains, right? I mean, the capital
Right.
gains. So
Yeah, if you actually sold it, right, you would actually physically realize that gain. But since we didn't hold it or you didn't sell it, you have to recognize that market value at that time. Again, it's like a picture. I never liked this pronouncement myself because of these market value fluctuations that you have to recognize at the end of the year.
on a cash basis, what impact does this have?
None. It didn't have a big cash. That was just market value adjustment there. The cash is recognized when the interest payments come due and the city receives the interest revenues, and those are all cash. From a cash standpoint, they all that's kind of a little bit why you're seeing 104% as of December 31st. You're still recognizing the cash value of a lot of those investments as they're paying off during the first 6 months.
All right, non-material on our budget.
Yeah, no, it's hard. I knew this big jump was going to happen. You have this big old blip in interest in one year, and all of a sudden the next year you're not going to have, maybe a third of it, not even that. It's because from an accounting pronouncements, the auditors, they say you have to recognize this market value on June 30th at your year end.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Anything else?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The last one I can think of are franchise fees. I think I mentioned franchise fees are coming a little under budget, but that's mostly due to the timing of the receipts. Let's see. So based on this analysis, we're proposing some adjustments to revenue.
So I just have a question on if I could, on the police fees. I'm just comparing this to the budget that I have that we got, the hard bond budget, and that budget was $329,000 for the police fees, and now the police fees are $815,000.
800. I'd have to look at the detail of what the 850. They might have been scattered in another area than just besides police, because that includes parking citations and some of the other things. So not knowing what exactly was included in the budget side, I can't. I'd have to get back to you on that one.
All right.
Why that difference between 815 and
329.
329 that's in the police budget side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Not knowing off the top of my head, I'm sorry. I think that's it for the revenues. Can we go to the next one? So based on our analysis, this is what we're looking at for revenue adjustments. The 400 in property tax, the 400,000 in UUT, the 1.3 in TOT, and the 700 basically bringing it in recreation fees, bringing that one down substantially. The $50,000 increase in community development fees is basically an offset in expenditures. They're estimating a greater plan check fees adjustment. They think they're going to receive $50,000 more in plan check fees. So in order, that offsets there's going to be a $50,000 increase in expenditures as well to pay for those plan check revenue or expenditures, professional services, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, next, please.
So Richard, that all makes intuitive sense to me. The recreation fee, that was just clearly a budget blow. Nobody should have thought. The one I don't, and you don't speak to very much, that's not intuitive here, is what's in utility users tax, and how would we miss that by so much, especially since the budget wasn't much of a walk up from the prior year?
Yeah, that one, I'm also a little surprised myself. The utility users tax is a combination of a utilities users tax as well as a communication utility tax. I'm not that versed on what that communication communication users tax is. Not familiar with your with the code or where those sources are coming from. I can't answer as to why the budget on that one. That's the majority of that 400. It's on the communication user tax. The utility user tax is the gas and the electric,
yep,
and the water. There's a communication one that it's hitting, I believe, an AT&T and some of these Comcast, some of these other ones that are paying into it. But I don't, not being familiar with how those revenue sources are coming from. I just noticed that receipts are much lower than what has been budgeted.
Okay, maybe wire cutting, but okay. I mean, it's small, and the
yeah.
2,750,000 looks reasonable to me.
Okay.
So did we actually miss a recreation fee by 700,000 really, or was this another one of those where we had something else in that because we knew what kind of activities and we had?
Yeah, it was lowered back in June of 2020 substantially, but again, I guess maybe the thinking was back then that things were going to open up sooner than later. They weren't going to we were going to have this second wave in the wintertime. I don't know. This was June of 2020, so they were hoping that things would maybe. The community center also was planning being on opening, so maybe some of those revenues were.
Well, the community center is on schedule, so that's
yeah.
Anyways,
yeah, that's why I said I think that was just a modeling blow, but it is what it is. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2.75.
Yep.
For the okay.
All
right.
Okay, now you're going to show us where you're going to get it back on the spend side. So have at
it. Not quite, but we hope. As you can see, the mid-year expenditures, this schedule again kind of shows the 1920s budget and actual as compared to the 2021 budgets, and then the year-to-date actuals for 2021. Again, that far right column compares the first two left columns as a percentage from a percentage standpoint. For the most part, all departments are coming in at midpoint, under budget. Roughly everybody, the whole general fund departments are 43%. The only exception is the executive one, which I mentioned in the staff report is due to the early year election costs and some litigation costs that incurred in the first half of the year. But the other ones are pretty much trending below budget. That's our saving. We can't count on that for sure. But for the most part, cities do come, or the city has come on in past years, roughly at 95% of budget. So there is, again, there's the possibility of savings. I mean, 5% of a $42 million budget, you know, that's $2.5 million.
So can I ask, so is there a variable component in the public works and recreation community? I mean, I would think the executive and legislative is all fixed overhead, you know, staffing people. Is that why we were able to squeeze that, or did we actually lose more people in those departments?
Yeah, well, community development is basically they've had a lot of construction activity over the summer, so a lot of their professional services and expenditures were happening over the you know, the first part of the year. Public safety, I can't answer. The only thing I can think of is like overtime, which could be throwing off the budget, or you know, for the good part maybe, that they aren't spending as much overtime. I can't answer for the why it's like at 41 and pretty and not, you know, closer to 50. So given the estimates of the shortage in budget, in budgeted revenues, and what we're looking at is facing about $1.3 million in shortfall. If you remember in the first part of my staff report, I mentioned the fiscal year 2021 budget was originally budgeted at a 1.3 surplus. So given the roughly 2.8 in shortage in revenues, that kind of equates to roughly a 1.3 deficit that you're looking at for the fiscal year 2021. So,
Richard,
any
are you going to go through any anticipated savings that you feel like is going to happen in the last half of the year?
The only savings that I could think of, you know, that I mentioned is that the city has been typically coming under the, you know, under the entire budget by roughly 5%. We can't, you know, bank on those, you know, but that's just a possibility at this point. We don't know for sure. We're looking at we're proposing that we're going to cut $1.3 million off of the departments. We don't know at this time how much each one. I think John can.
Yeah, if I can jump in. Yeah, we're finalizing exactly how much each department is going to cut. We've identified, you know, for example, we budgeted a certain amount for custodial services for the entire fiscal year that we're not going to be using all of those amounts. And so there is we're confident that there is enough savings over the 12-month period, or let me rephrase that, enough non-spending of budgeted items over the 12-month period that we can reduce the budget by the 1.4 million, the expenditures, excuse me, the approved budget expenditures by 1.4. Whenever we have a vacancy on a position, there's, salary savings there. As Richard has shown, most of the departments for the first half of the year didn't spend as much, and so we're confident that we'll be able to reduce the budgets, that the department heads will be able to find the cuts in expenditures that we need to get down so that it is balanced.
So I just had a comment which I just want to be sure it gets heard. So I'm actually concerned from the opposite side, which is that I think we have to be careful that in the short run we don't, recover our savings and the loss in revenue on the backs of overworking the employees we have. We are completely short-staffed. At least there's one person on this call who's got 2 jobs, you, John. So, I'm not sure if that's a great strategy to say, well, let's cut more. It reduces the level of service for the city. We're not in any great peril that we're going off a cliff in our overall revenue line. So saying that we should actually, not fill critical positions, we should, we're going to have more burnout. We're going to have more good people leave. And I'm not exactly sure if, and from my point of view, that's advisable that to recover a short-term blip that we should actually be cutting fixed overhead for staffing. And I'm actually concerned that I think the citizens, the residents feel that our service level is quite low in a lot of our departments already. So it's a double whammy, I think.
Well, yeah, thank you, Chair Calcat. And that your comments are appreciated. I will say that the proposed reductions that staff is looking at would not include freezing additional positions. To give a little bit of context, back during the June budget period and the beginning of COVID, staff proposed and the council approved freezing of 6 positions, 6 vacancies. Those reductions were built into the original FY 2021 budget. We are we are proposing to stay at the 6 frozen positions for now, and not proposing to freeze additional positions. I guess what I was trying to convey was when a vacancy does come up between the period of when the person leaves and the position is filled, there is usually some salary savings there.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the one side of it. The other flip side is, we should be trying to find the money, but I think we can find it in other things. Like you said, the executive line is high because of undue or unforeseen legal expenses. We have some leeway on works projects or CIP that we could push out. I would encourage you to actually think of it in those lines as opposed to sort of really, letting more people go or anything like that. Especially if this is the time to actually focus on the variables. If we can reduce our variable overhead. Is the expectation that the legal fee that we had budgeted we'd actually gone up quite a bit in it? We're, I think, on 3 times higher, that this would go up even more.
I couldn't answer that. All I know is the legal was budgeted substantially higher this year than in prior years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm glad.
Anybody else on the commission has a comment about my concern about not building the savings on the backs of our employees?
Yeah, Kuljit, this is Gary. I absolutely agree with you. Especially in the finance side, we're running lean with Richard and others just temporarily coming in. But just, Richard, nothing personal against you, but you aren't exposed enough to some of the details to even answer some of the questions. So I'm concerned, and I'm concerned that we're pushing pressure on the wrong places too, Kuljit. I think I'm not confident that we know where we are, just based upon answers and the questions tonight. So even the mentality of cutting staff is oppressive, and I don't think we need that. I think we need some optimism and some hope in the staff. I mean, well, I agree with you.
And if I could jump in again, thank you, Commissioner Callback. None of our discussions among the staff have been related to cutting staff or freezing positions, vacancies, et
Correct.
cetera.
That's correct.
All of the proposed, and again, just for the rest of this fiscal year, the reduction in expenditures have to do with whether it's a service or a program. So for example,
Service and supplies.
Yeah, and supplies, thank you. For example, recreation and community services was budgeted at 2.5 million. And as of the end of the fiscal year, at the end of the calendar year, we've expended just over 800,000. A large part of that is we didn't have the summer concerts. We didn't have programming in the fall and the winter. So a lot of the contractors or, instructors that would have come in, we didn't pay them. And so, that's an area where we can bring the budget back down. They're quite frankly, the Recreation and Community Services Department would have a hard time spending $1.7 million over a 6-month period. And so, again, we're not proposing to reduce staffing, to lay off, to freeze positions, no furloughs, anything like that. This would be solely on the supplies and services.
So on the same vein, then, I think, have you thought of any programs to actually increase our revenue? I mean, I think having the parklets, et cetera, is a good example. I'm sure that helped with our sales tax, right? So is there anything else that we have a lever that we could actually spend some money in the next few months, and that would have a positive impact on our total revenue? I know TOT is, obviously not our control. But there are other things that we could do to, even if we spend a little bit of money, we could make more money.
The short, John?
Yes.
I'm sorry. The short answer is no. We're dealing with only about 3 more months. And I want to reemphasize, there are no positions being challenged. We're going to deal with the remainder of 2021 under a COVID circumstance. I can tell you that going into 21, 22 circumstances, as John said, will change significantly. Property tax remains strong. Sales tax is challenging. But the city actually is in very good financial position. And so I understand the concerns of the Finance Commission, but I would strongly recommend that you, as John said at the beginning of the presentation, understand that 2021 is much different than what we're looking at 21, 22.
It's scary. I'm glad to hear that. My concern was that there's an overriding fear or mindset that is too negative. And I'm glad to hear both you and John refute that. That's fine. Good.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Thanks for that. Helpful.
Yeah, and to just kind of add on to what the city managers have said, we're always looking for those opportunities to, offer programs or whatnot, not necessarily to increase revenue, but certainly, to stimulate our local businesses and economy, which would lead to increase in sales tax. But quite frankly, with only a couple of months left in the fiscal year, it's unlikely we would realize any, or any great increase in revenues because of any programs that we implemented now, with the exception of bringing recreation programming to full 100% of what it was before, which we obviously can't do for COVID.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fine.
But
certainly, go ahead, John.
I was going to say, but certainly in a couple of months, when we bring the 2-year budget, those revenue numbers will be much more positive, and we will be looking at starting recreation programming, any other programs that maybe were put on hold, bringing those back.
So John, does this, have you anticipated any additional spending in the areas of COVID-related expenses or legal expenses that you think are on the horizon? Does this, have you captured those changes in expenses?
Yeah, good question. I think a lot of I think when we did the 2021 budget in June, we were anticipating expenses for COVID in particular. I think a lot of those have not been realized to what we would have thought, what we were anticipating them to be. If we were anticipating having to do much more of cleaning or disinfecting, and that hasn't been as much as we thought it might have been. And on top of that, there really has not been many unexpected expenses related to COVID. No new regulations or programs that we had to implement because of COVID. In terms of litigation, again, as Richard was saying, we'd have to dig a little deeper into that. My assumption is that we're probably trending about where we were thinking we were going to be, particularly with one case being settled and resolved. I think we're probably on track for where we were. But again, as Richard said, we'd have to really dig into that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, guys. And Gary, I actually look at this and I'm kind of optimistic, right? I mean, when I look at this, property tax saved the day again. We've imposed some realism on revenue, which was probably a little optimism on reopening and just a blow on recreation. And guys, I bet you if we told you you had to go spend the 42,933 by the end of June, you couldn't spend it. So you're going to get something back there because you haven't filled those positions. And if we told everybody we got out of this at the end of June, within a decent stare, a break even, and we said that a year ago, I think we would have said that's a pretty good outcome. So my view is this is a realistic and good outcome, and you guys have some hard budgeting to do for 22 and 23. That to me is more crystal ball stuff, but this looks like you're going to land everything in shape to me.
It just feels odd in some buckets, but otherwise overall, yeah, I'm not too concerned.
Right.
That was kind of my rough feeling too, as well. Putting the thing together, you see the drastic drops, but then you kind of, seeing that, well, there's possibility of reopening and there's a lot of savings. So my gut feeling was this kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, but again, it also exposes the Achilles heel that Martha usually makes the point right about here. The Achilles heel of Los Altos budgeting is there's no capital spend in these numbers either. So you're essentially going to have no surplus to spend on capital projects, but you get to some of that later on. So
Yep.
And just for the record, I think the commission had asked the rebudgeting exercise in March to be done at about 10%, and the city, it was done at about 5%, and now we're off by another 4.5%. So a 10% reduction might have been on the spot.
Yep.
Okay, Richard, you want to?
Okay. Next, on to the unassigned fund balance. So the good news, something good to present. Last year, there was a $7.8 million reserve, or not reserve, but surplus that resulted in for the year end. And as part of this mid-year report, we've always taken this part to the commission, get their recommendations, proposed allocation. The numbers we've thrown in here are basically adding to the operating reserve to bring it up to that 20% of expenditures. So that 8.693 is roughly 20% of the expenditures before any reductions that we have right now. So that brings it up to there, and the remaining was thrown into the CIP reserves, which this is all really just a proposal. It's up to your discussion.
You're looking for comment. Looks reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Have we not spent some of that 6.3 already? And if we were doing this on a cash basis?
This is pretty much as of a June 30th look. In other words, that June 30th, $30 million, or 38, sorry, adding in the additional, is as of June 30th.
Right. Isn't it all gone? Or do we actually know we have any bills we haven't paid?
No, this, that's one of our things to do, is our CIP budgeting, and to find out what exactly position we are year to date. Okay. That's definitely on our list to do.
Okay, thank you.
I would normally be arguing to increase the PERS reserve, but I would rather we focus on actually distributing that reserve into the states so that we can save the the long-term financial implications of it.
Yeah.
And I'd like the commission to kind of set a date where we make that decision and push for it, because we've talked about it for at least the 2 years that I've been on the commission.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree. Mark, I think we have that 5 that we almost paid off before COVID happened. I think it feels like we've sort of dodged a bullet, so maybe it is time to actually bring that up and do it. I think we held off because of the uncertainty for this fiscal year. So that's another topic for us, John. There is actually a standing subcommittee on this, so maybe we can call that again.
Okay.
Yes, I totally agree with Mark's point on that. If that money is intended for that, having it, to the extent you don't like your interest income, then that money should go to Sacramento to buy down the PERS liability at a market rate rather than a cash rate. So I'm totally with Mark. Since the time I've been on the commission as well, we've talked about applying that money. My next
so just to catch you up, John, I mean, on that, we were in the process of actually getting a consultant to tell us which line to pay off. That's it. We were that close to actually doing it when it got pulled off. So we've done a lot of thinking about this thing. So our recommendation is not changed to pay that off. It was just a mechanics of
Sure.
I think there are like 10, 12 lines we could pay off. We had to pick which one to pay off. So
Sure.
if you want to just go ahead and start that, I'm sure you'll get the commission's support to with their recommendation.
Yeah,
Sure. Well,
go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and if there's a subcommittee that's working on this, then we'll be happy to talk with the subcommittee and get this going and bring it back before the commission.
Yeah, that would be great. It's a super frustrating do loop that you talk yourself into, because Calpers runs on a June 30 fiscal, but they don't report the data for like 4 months after that, and then you get your data near year end and it's already 6 months latent. And then you got to find a time to talk to somebody at Calpers to understand their data and then make a decision. And then it's easy to talk yourself into saying, I got a line at June 30, why don't I see how they actually did this year? So we've been in that do loop a couple of times. Can somebody walk me through how the 10.7 for the community center reserve bridges up to the 38.5 spend? And at least how I remember this works is there was 25 million I'm just having trouble in my mind bridging and getting to 38.5 because I thought we started with 25. We borrowed 10. We have 38.5 of approved spend, and we need a little bit of money here. But does anybody have a better grasp of the numbers than those big pieces?
Well, so I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that the community center CIP budget was made up of different sources, including the community center reserve. I believe there was also just CIP dollars, and there may have been some park and lieu funds used for it as well.
Correct.
Keep in mind that this community center reserve of 10.6 doesn't include that 10 million borrowing that you did in December of 20.
Yeah.
And the good news is presumably if not this fiscal year, the next fiscal year it will zero out.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I had just my
Tony's
recollection.
question was about that 10.6. We understand that there were other parts. Wasn't that bigger number in the beginning on the June 30th? Is kind of a reflection.
Well, so this would have been, we would have been spending this money already. So prior to June 30th, it would have been higher, but as of June 30th, we had spent down to the 10.6.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I guess my question is, and I may misremember it, you other guys weigh in. I thought the way we got to it was I thought the community center reserve itself was $25 million. Maybe I misremember it.
No, you're correct.
And we borrowed 10, got this to 35, and I thought we had multiple discussions that said, yeah, depending upon how the spend actually moves from 35 to 38.5, we need to fund it from some other sources, whether it be the general fund, whether it be park and lieu, et cetera. And I guess my question is whether we have enough precision and anybody's thought about that, because I get the point that the 10.6, in fact, has probably all been spent at this point.
My recollection is that the delta was going to come from park and lieu. And we had quite a chunky park and lieu, a lot of money parked there. No pun intended, but I think the question, that's what sort of triggered us to, can we actually use park and lieu funds for doing these kind of projects, is why the agenda topic that we have came up. So, and I think we also didn't spend all 38, right? We spent close to 36.
So far.
Yeah.
So Tony, are you asking the question of why there is a community center reserve at all?
Yeah, I'm asking a slightly different question, which is, but close, which is, I know we're allocating the 7.8. I was changing the subject, and maybe it's one for another meeting, Martha, which is, where's the community center money going to come from? And to the extent that the loan and the 25 wasn't enough, which I don't think it is, where was that going to come from? And has somebody thought about that? That was really my question, poorly framed.
So you're saying that we could not put the 6.3 into CIP if some of that has to pay off the community center?
But unless you're going to get it out of park and lieu, right? That's kind of just, so I'm fine putting the 6.4 there. I mean, this is, the ultimate retroactive allocation back to June last year. So it is what it is. And you may have to reclassify it again, depending upon where you end up on the community center.
That's how I remember it, Tony, is that the rest was going to come from park and lieu.
Okay.
And then the other thing is that we did take 500 out of the technology reserve to give it to our legal fee. So this technology reserve number of 1.4 had actually come down to my recollection. And I felt like shame on us, we could not use this money to upgrade our, the tools of our, when our planning department could actually use some software to submit plans and things like that. But so that number also I thought was 500 less. Not that it matters, I think. We're not going to spend it on technology.
So on the emergency and operating, the 1.4 million proposed allocation, that's you're what exactly are you estimating that for? Anything in particular, or are you just saying you're putting it there versus putting it against the PERS reserve or something?
That brings the emergency and operating up to 20% of the operating expenditures. That's the reserve policy.
That's our
That
policy.
yeah, this fiscal policy that just meets the that just brings that like that 7.2 up to the 8 points, roughly 8.7 necessary to bring it, to meet that 20%.
To meet 20%. So is everything? Do these other fund balances also require a percentage to have in them?
No.
No.
The emergency and operating is the only one that needs a reserve of 20% of anticipated spending.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I think if you're asking us to approve this, I think I would break this up into two. One is into emergency and operating reserve, the 1.4, and the second about the CIP, because I think even though we have two different recollections of where the community center is going to get paid for, maybe that 6.3, some of it needs to be in the community center line and not in CIP. And that might be a point, might be just a visual, as opposed to actually what happens, but it might be an important visual that when it goes to council. So I'm not sure if we can break that up into two, and I would recommend that we check the community center budget and where it's getting paid from before we put it all in CIP.
Yeah, Chair Cockett, if I can jump in, I've been trying to look up the actual budget breakdown of the community center, so I will get back to you if I can find it really quickly.
Well, because I think you wanted us to have a motion to approve it. I was thinking if we split it, we probably have a better chance of at least getting the emergency and operating reserve up done.
Oh, okay. It seems to me the community center is just a subset of CIP anyway. It's just something we broke out.
Yeah, we broke it out, but I mean, visually it just shows you as to where the money is going. So you can't start imagining that 6.8 is going to go to all the other CIP projects that are there. So, that's why I want that visual is important for the council to see as to that, hey, this money is already spent.
Yeah, I guess personally, if we wanted to just settle with last year's surplus and approve the current proposal and then have to tune it up later to move it from one essentially CIP item to another CIP sub item, I would kind of just go for that.
Okay.
It's okay with me, Kuljit. I mean, I'm with you as long as people understand you got to finish the project out back first before you spend that money. Other than that, I think this all makes sense to me.
Richard, Richard, do you happen to have a slide on the actual what the fund balances are to date or as of December?
Unfortunately, no, I don't have that. You'd have to do our fiscal year closing involves a whole bunch of things that you could, that we would have to accrue, and it's a hard number to track mid-year, to give mid-year.
I see.
We could just estimate it based on revenues and expenditures, and that's probably our best guess.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So technically, we're talking about reserves are all in one fund, right? This is all the money is in the operating fund. This is not separate funds.
This is just general fund.
Right. These are just the reserves within that fund.
Right.
So they are much more fungible. So I have less trouble in approving one or the other, because it's just a line item in the same fund. It would be harder if it was in two different funds that we approve one fund or to go into one fund, because then you'll have to actually do a bunch of accounting to get it out of one fund and put it into that fund.
I think
John,
I'm sorry.
John Maggio, didn't this slide go out to the city council today? In the package for Tuesday?
Yeah, so the draft report did. But with the caveat that depending on recommendation from the Financial Commission, it may change, and that's the intent is if
we
you
really
as a-
need to change. Yeah.
Yeah, as if you as a group want to recommend something different, then that will get incorporated for the council's consideration.
Well, maybe we're arguing too finally on it. Maybe just leave it the way it is recommended, with the understanding that some of that has to pay the community center.
Yeah, like I said, it's. I mean, I'm okay with it being approved the way it is. I was just being a little picky for the council's visual to see where the money is going, but it is in the same. It is in the same fund, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I would be afraid of confusion with changing this slide, which has already gone out.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Well, and I'll just I'm sorry I didn't get the exact breakdown of the budget, but I will say that the community center budget would have been the funds would have been allocated at the $35 million, and so unless the project runs over budget, which as of now it's not going to, then we shouldn't need additional funds for that exact project.
Okay.
I know we talked about the reserves as to where was that money coming from. So there was a $25 million reserve lying in the operating fund for the last fiscal year. And then there was, of course, 10 million in loan, and that leaves us with we had to have allocated another 3 million because we had 38 million. So I think that was going to come out of, my recollection is it was going to come out of park and lieu, but
yeah, it would have been somewhere in the CIP, whether it was park and lieu funds or it was general fund dollars or something.
Okay.
It would have been out of the CIP somewhere.
Okay, all right. So I think in interest of time, maybe we move on, and if this is the time you want to get us to approve that, we can, or do you want to wait till you discuss your salary schedule also?
However you like. Do you want to take public comment now, or I don't know that we need to. I mean, the salary schedule, it's just we're adding one classification for a finance director. It will be at the same salary range as the administrative services director. Will allow the city the flexibility to recruit a finance director, somebody who is just focused solely on finance and not splitting their time between finance, HR, and IT. But in order to do that, we need to update the salary schedule. So that's the only change for the salary schedule. So.
And salary schedules are a range? Is that what they are?
Yes, they are a range.
Okay. Anybody have a concern or want to talk more about it, or should we just?
I would move that we recommend that. I think it makes a lot of sense. So I'd move that we would recommend that change to the salary schedule, adding a finance director.
I'll second that. Or it's not adding a finance. It's not adding a finance
It's
director.
It's changing the classification.
Okay, it's just respecing the job, right?
Well, it's adding the position as a separate classification from administrative services director.
Well, we're not hiring against the administrative services director.
You would not have both a finance director and an administrative services director.
No.
You're basically changing the title.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
allowing the city the flexibility to recruit either a finance director or an administrative services director.
Okay.
That was my motion.
Yeah.
Mr. Maginot, this is Anita. This is a Brown acted meeting, and I think before you vote on an item, you need to take public comment irrespective of the time involved.
And that was going to be my suggestion, Chair Calcat, is if before we do the vote, maybe see if there is public comment on this item.
Of course.
So I guess, is there anyone wishing to speak on this, on the mid-year budget item?
Yes,
Go ahead, Roberta.
Roberta, you're on mute.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Just, a couple of things that I do want to bring up, and that is that we will have expenditures coming up that we haven't had in the past, and that is, the $500,000 to $600,000 for the housing element that we're going to hire a consultant for. We're going to have the interest on the loan, which we haven't had in past years, and I would have to agree with all of you people that we don't want to do this on the backs of the employees, but rather look at, the CIP and what we can push out. I don't know if the EOC should be postponed another year, because I think you have about 2.3 million budgeted for that, but that won't cover it. So I certainly don't want it to get started and not be able to get finished. Also, just one other thing that I might want to mention is, at some point, Jim Sandoval gave an estimate of, the projects that have been approved where the people have not pulled their permit yet. And supposedly over the next couple of years, we will have about 19 million in our park and Luffy, which is sort of not accounted for here, which is of course good news. So I would just urge everybody to be as cautious as we possibly can at this point. And we're still having the city council on every other week basis approve monies for X when we still don't know today where we are. And I know it's difficult. I know you're trying to catch up. But those are sort of my comments. Are it's not Chicken Little. The sky is falling, and we do want to see the sun come out, but it may not come out as fast as we want. And I think we need to be cautious still. Just rather be safe than sorry. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Roberta.
Okay, so Chair, I think there was a motion and a second.
Okay, let's take roll.
Would you like to do the vote?
Yes, please.
Helen, can you call the roll call vote? Helen, you're on mute, Helen.
Okay, sorry about that. So the motion was by Commissioner Callback and second by, which commissioner seconded?
I seconded Gary's motion.
Yeah, second by Commissioner McClatchy. All ayes.
Aye.
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 Helen, let's do a roll call, please.
Okay, let's do a roll call. Okay. Commissioner Callback,
Aye.
Commissioner Claras,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry,
Yes.
Commissioner Calcott,
Yes.
Commissioner McClatchy.
Yes.
So all ayes. The recommendation to recommend the updated salary schedule has passed.
Is that all we had to vote on? Not on the approval of the allocation of the funds?
Yeah, so let me call it back up. We had the 3 asks of the commission. Recommend approval of the revenue and expenditure adjustments, and then recommend approval or the allocation of the unassigned fund balance.
So was that inclusive? Was our vote for all 3?
The motion was for the salary schedule.
Correct.
I would move
Okay.
for the other 2 at this.
Yeah, can we move the other 2 as a combo, John? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think
So
that's fine.
move.
Second.
One more time, Helen.
Oh, okay. So another roll call?
Yes, please.
Okay, so by motion of, so we're going to do another roll call for recommending the agreement, sorry, for the other 2 motions. So that is recommending the allocation of the funds as well as the mid-year. Could we go back to
The mid-year budget adjustments, the revenue and expenditure adjustments.
Yeah, items 1 and 2 on the deck.
Items 1 and 2.
Okay. So the approval of the mid-year budget adjustments as well as the approval of the unfunded liabilities.
No, the unassigned fund balance.
Unassigned fund balance.
Unassigned fund balance.
Unassigned fund balance. So we're going to do a roll call. So Commissioner Callback.
Aye.
Commissioner Claras.
Abstain.
Commissioner Richmond.
Yes.
Commissioner McClatchy.
Yes.
Commissioner Kalkak. Commissioner Fry.
Yes.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and approve the recommendations of the unfunded funds as well as the mid-year budget recommendations.
So we have 5 yeas, 1 absent, 1
Abstain.
abstain.
Yes.
That's fine, right?
Yep.
Okay, super. Yeah.
Thank you all so very much, and thank you for the questions. I think it really helps Richard and I to know what you are looking at. Helps us to know where to focus a little bit more, and we appreciate your support and your recommendation tonight.
Yes.
You guys are all doing a good job. Just keep it up. It's
And we're-
unusual circumstances in unusual times.
Yes, you can say that again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're here for you guys, John. We're really rooting.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay. We have 2 more topics. It's 7:30, so
Do you want the agenda pulled back up?
yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so the next item is a review of the park and lieu funding policy. We've included in your packet the municipal code section, which outlines, the city's ability to collect park and lieu funds. As mentioned there, our engineering services department is working on the updating the fees for park and lieu, and so those will come to the commission. We're anticipating next month, so we can actually talk a little bit more about what the fee is. We may have a better idea of how much money we have in there. We may not, though, and we may be able to tell. Well, I don't want to overpromise. But so you have the code section there. So happy to answer questions if there's any discussion that you want to have on this.
So we only had one question, which is what this came up as in terms of policy is that I was not clear, sure, and I think reading this, I'm still not clear, that first of all, can we use park and loop or generally any kind of construction like we did for the community center? Two, if the park, let's say the park fee was collected next to the country club, can it be used in a different part of the city, or is it restricted to be used within that geography of the town? I think there's a term in it, and I don't remember right now that
Sure.
that the law uses for describing a subset of the town.
Sure.
So the point was that I think maybe if we are going to be actually to facilitate and make sure that if we are going to be using these funds for paying off on buildings and other infrastructure stuff, maybe we should update this policy. It's not necessarily a financial policy per se concern. It's more of a city council to kind of do this on their own. But it has an implication in terms of just how we use the funds as per being compliant to a financial policy. But I don't think the Finance Commission has a bone in this thing. I don't think, I mean, I'll let everybody else speak, but I just wanted to this policy be cleaned up so that we can do what the city is actually intending to do with parking lot funds.
Okay. Well, and maybe to respond a bit, Helen, can you make that bigger? Maybe get it onto one page. So the municipal code does talk about the use of the funds. Helen, if you scroll down further, bottom of this page talks about the use of and basis for in lieu fees. And so if you read through that, you know, and again, this let me phrase set this up. This is not a legal opinion, but what I will do is for the discussion, hopefully next month, see if I can get some further clarification from the city attorney on what it can be used for, how it can be used, where it can be used. But it does talk about how it can be used to purchase land, improving the land, constructing improvements in neighborhood and district parks and recreational facilities. You know, I think the thought behind the community center was that does serve the entire city, and so it is a recreational facility. Certainly, park and lieu funds could be used for that. But like I say, I will see if I can get a better answer to that question from the city attorney for your discussion when we bring the park and lieu fee to the group.
Okay. Any other commissioner have a comment on this thing, or?
Yeah, my only other question on that, John, is whenever this has been discussed before, we were told that a permissible use of this money would be the debt service or principal reduction related to the underlying facility. So I'd be curious if the city attorney has a different view, because one of the notions it had been that over time this fund will do reasonably well, and it's a source of funding to pay down the community center loan. If that was the wrong assumption, it's okay. That money is fungible. There's other money in the system, but
sure,
at least that's how I understood it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's special. I mean, if we're anticipating this fund to get very large, then we should be clear about the fiscal policy for it.
Okay.
Okay. Next one.
So next was the donation policy. I think at your last meeting, this was brought up, the question of, does the city have a donation policy? What is it? Can we look at it? All we have is this policy from 2008, which basically says that the city manager can accept a donation up to $10,000. Anything above that goes to the city council for their consideration.
All right. So this one, I think I would really ask that either we create a little subcommittee to draft some words on it, or however you want to do it. But I'll give you my point of view on it, which is why this came up last time, is that we're seeing this more and more, that people want to give the city money to do projects, etc., or that's being raised as an option. So I think we should have a policy that's clear that one is, if somebody wants to give money to the general fund, so this is again bringing it back to sort of the financials of the city, then yes, we should have just some sort of a check on whether this person is, it's not something illegal or wrong about the money, etc., and that's checked. So we are doing the right thing by accepting that. And then if the city wants to have a policy that says, okay, we are going to do project X, and we are opening that up for acceptance of public contribution. And only if the city actually creates such a fund and says, we're going to create a fund for this project, and we are welcoming contributions, and then maybe we can actually, then in that scenario, we can actually accept funds for doing a specific project. But otherwise, all of the contributions that somebody wants to make go into the general fund at purely at the discretion of the council and the city in terms of how they're spent. So some very specific, clear language on that will help, because I think when we talk about all these new CIP type of projects and people have an opinion one way or the other how they should be done, I think at least we should have an ability to, how we handle the money that comes in is very important that we be clear about it. So that would be quite a change to this document. I know we have a whole financial policy, for the city and all. This should be part of it, I think. And if somebody can take up, if generally what I'm saying kind of makes sense to all of you, then somebody needs to make it sound and cover all the bases, kind of a thing, and update this document is my recommendation. John, we can't hear you.
Kolji, this is Gary. I'm not sure I see the problem. I mean, if somebody makes a contribution for a fountain, something else, and it's $250,000, the city would accept it on that basis, right? I mean, I don't see the policy.
Yeah, the concern, Gary, is that somebody says, I'm going to give you, $5 million if you build a, something in this on this street and and somewhere else. So you have to do the project as per their requirement.
Right.
And said, no, I'll give you $7 million to do another project on this street as opposed to that one. I think if we can avoid ourselves from getting into these kind of things where everybody's favorite project gets funded, is that if we decouple the two and saying, okay, the city has a process of figuring out which projects it wants to do, independent of the source of money, right? So we know that we have a list of projects that the council, with the opinion of the residents of the city, kind of decide. And then we say, okay, you know what, we really want to do this project, and we currently can't imagine, but we have a lot of projects. We have 50 projects on our CIP list or more, but we want to open some of them up to public contribution. And then maybe, then as opposed to saying, well, somebody can, some resident can just start a new project for the city just because they have the money.
Well, that's part of the job of the city council, to make those decisions. And I'm at a loss of trying to think of, imagine a 400-page policy that I just don't see that you can anticipate all of the problems that could arise. But ostensibly, we have an intelligent enough city council to go through that and say, that's not in we don't want to do that. So we're not going to accept it. I mean, that happens every day in other purviews.
Well, my concern was that, give the city council a shield, help them make those kind of decisions correctly, as opposed to, I mean, that's what policies are for, right? And make sure that we all agree that in the future, a scenario arises, we know that we can look up our policy handbook and say, hey, this is what when we were thinking about this with a clear head, as opposed to when the emotions are high, and this is what we decided as a city to do.
Yeah, I'm not fighting it. I'm just imagining that we should be so lucky that we have two multi-million-dollar gift stores that are going to compete for something in the city, and the city council then would have to come up to it. So I guess I'm not a good candidate for building this.
We've had several projects like this that, I mean, we had the park in downtown. That was a potential. We had this whole many hours of discussion about bocce ball courts in Grant Park. We now have a proposal for somebody who wants to build Halsey House. We have very current proposals that people are talking about. The council is spending lots of time on.
I tend to agree with putting in the general fund, because then we're going to have all sorts of exceptions, rules, and guidelines for how we accept the money. And it'll become very complex very quickly. Whereas if we just take money to go to the general fund, it becomes a very simple policy.
Right. I completely agree that would be the simplest thing to do, but that might be too restrictive for the council. I'm just saying that to give them a chance to say, that if you are gonna, then the council should initiate and saying, okay, hey, this is a public good project that we want to do, but we don't foresee the city having money for this thing for the next decade. So we will take public contribution, but they should be the ones who should initiate that, as opposed to somebody coming to them and saying, I'll give you money if you do my favorite project.
And you can see how individual projects may come in conflict. Exactly. Where you may have two projects for the same space in the same park.
Exactly.
How do you do that? The highest bidder? No, we could do it on a case-by-case basis if you had a very generous donor. That's
why I'm saying that if we decouple the decision criteria for this is a project that's going on our list of projects we're going to actually get, that vision is there is a process for that already. Regardless of the money, we have 50 or 60 projects that we have deemed important enough to actually write a half page on and put it in our CIP book. So we have a big list. So now the question is that if somebody says, I like project 12 and I'd like to fund it, and somebody says, no, I would like something else. So how do we accept that money? Is this I mean, I think it'd be too restrictive if you just say, let's put it all in general fund and that's all you can do. So then the donors have no say in, why would they come forward? Because they just want to just give money to the general fund. I think the opportunity goes away. I think, we see this at very small scales, like Los Altos Hills builds its community center or town hall. They let you pay $5,000 towards a brick, that goes in the wall to commemorate your contribution to the town hall, something like that. So they came up with a program to allow people to contribute money.
Kuljit, I was just going to say, I think I'm with Gary, at least self-selecting myself off the subcommittee, because the problem doesn't leap out at me. And my general view is if somebody wants to give the city money, I'd send a car for them. And I just think the city council's capable of managing it as, when, and if we get there. And I don't know why we'd constrain it up front and try to make one size fits all between a modest amount of money for bocce ball courts or somebody who wants to build a new center of town. I mean, that's just my view. Other people may feel strongly about it. I don't fundamentally object to it. I just don't see the problem.
Have we been asked by the city council to review this?
No.
Okay.
I think we were asked in the context of the Halsey House, that's where this came up. And then we were told not to provide a comment on the Halsey House. So yes, we were in a way, and then we were asked not to. So this was in the context of that. That's where this conversation came out of, because we were asked to pick whether we should spend 100,000 or 3 million or whatever, which sounded a little bit odd. And we were trying to actually be a little bit thoughtful about recommending what to do with Halsey House. But right now we are not being officially, that thing was recent. It was called back, that request.
Yeah, and that 100,000 wasn't a donation. It was out of city funds, if I remember right.
Right.
So that's a different.
I thought that was, door A, door B, door C.
Yeah.
Of spending on that. So, I don't feel strongly about it, Puljit, but it doesn't leap to mind as the biggest problems on the commission's to-do list.
Okay. I'm happy to just let it go because it came up in the context of that, unless anybody has another.
Yeah, and again, if the city council actually wants us to do it, then that's fine with me. I think sua sponte, it doesn't leap out as something begging to be done with where we're at.
We should have such a big problem as having $25 million of potential donations.
Yeah.
Then we can form a subcommittee, and I'll be glad to chair that one.
Yeah.
Because I've done those things.
Well, we did have money like that for that, so the park downtown.
Yeah, that was a, anyway, I would drop it for now.
All right, let's drop it. We were first asked to think about it, then we were asked not to think about it. So this is a vestige of that. So we can drop it. All right, staff announcements.
I don't have any announcements other than to sort of give a sneak peek of what's coming up on your agendas. Of course, I mentioned earlier, next month, we're hoping to talk about Park and Lou. You'll also be getting a update on the community center, where that's at. Also looking at the vet policy again, and then we'll start with budgeting. So it'll be fun times.
Sounds good. Hiring has started. Interviews have started.
What's that?
Have interviews started or for the finance director?
No, so we've not started recruiting for the finance director yet. Hopefully that will start here in the next few weeks. Of course, we need to get the salary schedule updated before we can even start that. And then we'll start looking at the timing with in relation to some of the other staffing moves that are coming up.
Okay. Anybody else have any news to share? Nothing.
Get your vaccinations when you can.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Okay, so we can adjourn then. Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night. Thank you.